Hello, and thank you for joining us for this interview with Erica Taft. She is a holistic nutritionist, but it didn't begin there. She actually has recovered from how many autoimmune conditions?
AIDS, but there were some that were actually not even diagnosed to me. So technically 12.
Well, so she
Yeah.
has gone through a complete holistic lifestyle journey. And, this is a remarkable journey because she actually recovered from all of her health conditions. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And
Yeah,
good to see you again, too.
You
yeah,
too.
it's been a while. So walk us through what were these autoimmune conditions and these health issues you were having?
So I started having symptoms when I was about 13 years old, and it kind of just progressed from there. So I was experiencing bloating and headaches, things like that. It started coming around the time of my menstrual, and then it just worsened over time. And so when I was about, I think I was 16 years old, I was in like a size 03, and my weight went rapidly to a size 11. And that's when too I started getting more fatigue. I was dealing with depression. I was having anxiety. At that time, I was attending a small private school, and I thought, well, if I shift to a different school, maybe things would help. Maybe I would fit in more there. So I did, and it only caused issues to become worse. So then I started dealing with social anxiety. I was hyperventilating. I was getting nervous going to school. And then that's when I started like experiencing having to breathe in a paper bag.
Mm.
I was having inflammation in my hands, tons of inflammation in my feet. It hurt to walk. I then got my first job, and coming home, I would have to like stick my feet in the freezer, things like that.
Oh,
So I finally started needing a doctor's help, so I thought. And so I was going to the doctor. They were running all of these tests, and they were like, oh, it's just, it's just in your head and you'll get through it. Just stick it out. And at that time, too, I was dealing with sinus infection after sinus infection after sinus infection. And so the symptoms weren't stopping, they were only progressing. And so during that time, I was diagnosed with PCOS and Hashimoto's, which explains all the weight gain and the acne, the cystic acne that I was dealing with, the fatigue and the hormonal imbalances. And then I was also diagnosed with Raynaud's. And so when I had Raynaud's, I had different inflammation and circulation issues in my fingers that they would turn blue and white, couldn't tolerate the cold, couldn't tolerate the heat. And it kind of just went back and forth. And then a few years later, it only progressed even more, even after I started losing weight, exercising, thought I was still incorporating healthy eating habits and lifestyles. And so in 2017, I became so tired during my lunch on my work days, I would have to take a nap. I couldn't even stay awake to eat. I had to sleep. And so that wasn't normal. And I was like, I got to get to the bottom of this. So I went back to the doctor. They continued running labs, and turns out I had lupus, mixed connective tissue disease, hypermobility. They wanted to put me on this very strong medication. And at that time, I was already on spironolactone because of diabetes insipidus. They had me on metformin. My
oh,
blood sugar was all over the place, and they thought it would help me hormonally also. And then when it came down to leaky gut, I visited a GI, and he put me on budesonide. And then when it came down to pain and inflammation and swelling, they had me on prednisone. And so when they wanted to put me on the hydrochloroquine, I was just like, this is enough. I have to do something else because this is not working for me. And so basically that's where it all kind of crumbled.
so how many years had elapsed here?
So I
So
started getting
13.
diagnosed, I think it was like 2014, I believe. So about, I believe 3 years was a time span with all of that. And not only did I get the final diagnosis of like lupus and mixed connective tissue, but I also had a prognosis given of 6 to 10 years if I wouldn't take the medication. So it was after high school. I had already gotten my career started. I was in sales, and that's when I started getting even more diagnosis. So symptoms started when I was like 13, and then I started getting diagnosed around the age of 18, I believe, 16, 18, something like that. And then they only progressed through the age of like 27. And so 27, I think it was when I was 27, I received the prognosis.
And what year was that approximately?
So that was year 2017.
Okay.
So that was 6 years ago. I'm 32 now. So that was 26. I was 26 when I received that.
Wow. And Erica, you look like a pillar of health right now. And to have gone through that journey of all like 12 autoimmune conditions, that's just astonishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a very big thing to just muddle through, I guess. It was a big thing to decide if I was going to let disease defeat me or if I was going to grab hold of faith.
Yeah.
And, I just had to grab hold to faith and know that in my weakness, he was strong. And therefore I would be strong. And so every day was just another step further and further and further. And in 2020, I thought I was healed. I thought everything was great. I was working out. I was energized. I was out in the sun running in 90-degree weather with lupus. And, because before I couldn't even tolerate sitting in a hot car. My whole face would flare, my hands would flare. And I remember even going on a holiday with the family, and it was too hot where I couldn't stay outside at the park. I had to sit in the car with the air conditioning on, and it was still too hot for me to sit in the car, and we had to leave.
Oh, wow.
And it was it's so sad, like things like that. And so in 2020, I came across Dr. Brooke Goldner's plan. And so I started implementing tons of greens and tons of green smoothies. And I believe that was kind of like the cherry on top to everything else I did. And so that's when I started running. I had tons of energy and I felt great. I felt fantastic. But for some reason, I started losing weight a little bit. And I thought, oh, it's just temporary. Like, I'll just gain it back. And I believe it was by January, I dropped to 82 pounds. And then by May, I was 79 pounds.
And this was in 2021?
This was in 2021. And so then around June of 2021, July, I started feeling a really big shift in my health. And it started going up again. And I started feeling better again. And so then a little at a time, my body just started recovering. And here I am now.
Here you are. So,
wow.
Stepping back for a minute, okay?
Yeah.
You were talking about you came down with these health conditions, and the doctors, you went to many different specialists, and they were giving you medication after medication after medication. Right. So, was that the plan that they had for you? What was their recommendation? You're just going to have to live life on medications the rest of your life?
They had me going back and forth because I would go for migraines and they were like, oh, it's related to your gut, or I would go to the gut and then they're like, oh, you have to go to this doctor. And it was just like back and forth. And so basically that's all they wanted me to do. They wanted to give me the go around and they would send me to a different specialist and then they would literally do nothing for me.
Really?
Nothing. And I would be spending money to go see a doctor that would give me absolutely nothing beneficial to take home and apply for myself to get better.
So throughout this process, were you just continuing to get worse? I mean, were you better at all?
I was continuing to get worse, especially like with my fatigue and being tired, that was kind of the thing that I think weighed on me the most. And so in 2017, I was working full time and I was so exhausted. My boss was just, they were brutal about it. And even on my lunch hour while I slept, they were brutal about it. But I was getting ozone treatments done during that time. And I'm happy that I at least knew a little bit of natural healing, where I was able to apply different healing modalities. And I wish I would have known more, but I just didn't at that time. And so that's when I started doing the ozone treatments. But they were only open during the first hours that I was supposed to be working. And so my boss got irritated with that, and she said, no more, you cannot do anymore. And then I think that's what held me over working. And I think that's what gave me enough energy to continue to work and do what I needed to do. Because between that, I was also doing B12 shots on occasion, like pretty often I was taking B12 shots. And that was giving me enough energy and stamina to do my job. But it didn't take away the fatigue. And so I just kept pushing through that way, started learning a little bit about nutrition. And also during that time, my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, we went on a 40-day puree diet. Because I had so many stomach issues. And I'm like, the food, it just makes my stomach hurt. So anything that we could blend, anything that we could eat, any blended soups like tomato soup or applesauce or smoothies or peas, like blended peas, whatever we could do, that's what we did. And I actually felt really good from that.
This was all plant foods, right? Totally vegan, or were you incorporating some animal foods at all?
I'm sure I incorporated probably some dairy at that time. I don't remember adding dairy, but I did have dairy in my diet. So I kind of probably just assumed that I'm more than likely did.
So was there a breaking point to where you said, okay, I can't continue with this pharmaceutical approach any longer? Because you were incorporating the ozone, you were doing the B12, you did the 40-day puree diet. But at what point did you say, okay, I have to walk away from Western medicine?
So in 2017, I knew that Kyle was the one that I wanted to marry. And so we had a discussion, and I said, they tell me that having kids is going to be very problematic, that I more than likely won't be able to conceive. Especially if I were to go on this medication, it would just make things worse. So I let him know there's a probability that I may not live long, and there's a probability that I may not be able to conceive. And so would you, is this something you still want to pursue? I just had to have that heart-to-heart talk with him.
That must have been a hard conversation to have, right?
That was a very hard conversation to have. Very hard, but he took it so well. And he said something to the fact of, absolutely, like, I want to spend this life with you. So in 2018, in May, I won't forget that because it was the day before my birthday. I don't know why I did that, but I went to a different doctor at a different hospital for a second opinion. And she said, your doctor was correct. Everything that he said was correct. And if you do not take this medication, that your life will be shortened. And so they were calling my mother, they were calling me, pushing this medication. And that was probably around that time I wanted to do something different. And so I started praying and praying and praying. And I received a call from a doctor who I had seen in Tennessee when I landed in the ER, Dr. Kevin Stasny. And he closed the door in the ER and he was like, you have leaky gut and you have a histamine intolerance. And so I want you to go home and I want you to eat nothing with a face on it and nothing that comes from anything with a face. And
really?
Yes. And so this was a medical doctor. And this was very eye-opening for me. And that's kind of what almost turned the light switch on. It was like halfway.
Yeah.
And so I started doing what he said. And for a little bit, I was feeling better. And yeah, I started shifting over to like goat cheese instead of like cow's milk. I was doing salmon more than meat, just different little things like that. I was still eating animal products. And it was end of 2018, I was getting worse. And 2019, I started getting extreme bad sinusitis. My face would swell really bad. My hands would swell really bad. And I just couldn't shake all the mucus that I was experiencing. Couldn't get off the couch, couldn't work out, didn't want to be around people. And Dr. Kevin Stasny, he was the one that called me and was like, oh, I remembered you. I went to this conference and all I heard was Erica in my head. And he was like, so I wanted to call you and touch base. And that was when I connected with him about like the oats test and all of that. During that same year, however, was the year I was praying, God, show me something. I know that you can speak to me.
Yeah.
And I had already knew about the Gerson therapy due to our cake designer for our wedding. She knew. Yeah. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
So she knew what I was suffering with, because when she made my wedding cake, she had to do a gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, like all of these different allergies. And she was like, okay, have you ever heard of the Gerson therapy? And I was like, no. And so that's when she introduced it to me. So I was researching and I found the clinic and I was like, oh, I could go to the clinic, maybe, you know. Then I learned that only a certain amount of people get pulled in at a time, and it was very expensive. So not only did I not have the funds to go, but I also didn't want to take that spot away from somebody else that needed it worse than I did. So I got back online and I'm like, I know that you can speak to me. I know that you can show me something. And a testimonial from Bella Vita came up.
Yeah.
And so I watched it. And what he was saying, I could relate to. And so I instantly sent it to my mother, my grandmother, and my husband. And I was like, look what I found. And they were almost like instantly just game. Like they thought it sounded great. And that's when I discovered Bella Vita.
Yeah.
And I met you guys.
Yeah, I remember, Erica, you reaching out, and I spoke to you the first time on the phone, and you were sharing with me your journey as far as what you had experienced. And something that's popping into my head right now is the doctors gave you a prognosis of like, what did you say, 6 to 10 years if you didn't take the medication. And you had all of these health conditions, and you weren't feeling well. At any point, did you feel as if I'm ready to give up? I can't do this any longer. I'm in so much pain,
Absolutely. And so here I might get a little emotional.
Yeah.
But at the time, our upstairs was needing to be redone. We were actually having an air mattress in our dining room, and we were sleeping there, and I just had the worst migraine in my life. My whole entire body hurt. I was flared from my head to my feet. And I just remember the migraine felt as though you just put an astronaut helmet on and you just squeezed it extremely tight. And that's what I felt. And so I felt very sick. I felt very weak. I felt very hot, very inflamed, very swelled. Felt like everything was just going to burst. And so my husband was trying everything. And I just said, you know what, I'm done. And I laid down and I said, God, if I don't wake up in the morning, I will understand why. Like, I will not be sad if I don't wake up in the morning. And so I laid my head down to sleep, not caring not minding if I didn't wake up the next day.
Mm.
And well, my mom and my grandmother are very in tune with God. And I believe this was January 26th of 2019. So this was still before I came to Bella Vita. And so they called me the next day, and I kind of told them what happened. And my grandmother and my mother were woken up in the middle of the night to pray over my life.
Really?
And my grandmother said that was one of the biggest spiritual warfares she ever prayed against during that night.
Wow. Wow.
So that was the one night that I was just about to like surrender it all. I really didn't care if I didn't wake up the next day because I couldn't tolerate the pain. And but God had a different plan.
Yeah, man, our hearts go out to you. But I think of the empathy that you most likely have for other individuals who are going through what you went through. I mean, you think God was preparing you to be able to reach people and touch people who are desperate, or who are possibly laying there going, if I don't wake up tomorrow, I'm okay. You know? So you reached out to me, and I was speaking with you over the phone, and I said, Erica, I don't know if you're really a fit, because what you're sharing with me, you've tried the majority of what we incorporate here. I mean, you've done the juicing, you've incorporated cleansing aspects, you've done ozone therapy, you've done B12 therapy. I don't necessarily know what else our program could offer you. I mean, yes, we specialize in the detox aspect of it, and that's kind of the foundational end. And you said, well, God has told me I'm to go, and I'm coming. And I was like, okay, well, I may be saying no, but she's saying I'm coming anyway.
And that was one of the things that struck me also about you. You were such a woman of faith. You mentioned your mother and your grandmother are very in tune with God. Well, I definitely saw that in you too. You were very in tune with God and just, relying on Him for answers and for help and healing.
Yeah. And
so that was very special to witness.
Yeah. And I know you put out I think it was a donation plea or pledge to your friends and your family and your community. And you're like, God, if I'm to go, these funds need to come in. And I think you had, I don't know if it was 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you needed the funds, and they were there for you, I believe. They came through. And it's interesting, a verse my wife loves is Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans that I have for you. And you really believe that God was speaking to you, that you needed to come. And I believe that Bella Vita, the program that God has blessed us with, was a stepping stone for you to get to where you are today, because God certainly puts things in our path to lead us ultimately where He wants us to go, so everything, it's a stepping stone. But I remember during your intake video, we captured your testimony at the very beginning. We had a husband and wife come through, and they were putting together I think it was a form of a documentary on individuals who went to different lifestyle centers and the different conditions that they had. So he sat you down and filmed your testimony. And I remember specifically the words you said. You said, all I wanted to do was to be able to hold my boyfriend's hands without pain.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah. And I remember watching the testimony afterwards and going, how difficult that must have been to just want to be able to hold your boyfriend's hands and not have pain, So
not very many people have that problem. They don't have that level of inflammation or that, that progression of disease where it's like just painful to even hold somebody's hand. Yeah.
And I believe when you came through the program, you were 27. Is that right?
I believe that, yeah.
Yeah. And,
it was 4 years ago. So yeah, I think I was 27 though, because it was before my birthday. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, for such a young woman to have all of these different health conditions, I mean, I've shared with some individuals and I said, well, how old do you think this woman was? And then I'll show them your picture. And they're going, oh, she most likely 70s, 80s. I mean, near the end of their life, and they have all of these health issues. And then I say she's 27 years old. And they're like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, such a young woman with all of these health issues. But you came to the program, you experienced Bella Vita. I know it was 4 years ago, but what was that journey kind of like for you? I know it was a stepping stone, but you came to the program, you felt God was leading you to the program. Do you remember what that journey was like for you, and how did it propel you to the next step?
Yeah, I do very much remember that. And before I came to Bella Vita, I had stumbled across the whole celery juice medical medium. And that's kind of what introduced me to juicing. Yeah. And that's why I incorporated that. But when I came to Bella Vita, it was like on a whole new platform. And that's when I really started learning about the need of detox, the importance of it. Because there's so many toxins in our body. And that was something that I didn't understand. I wasn't very much exposed to, and I couldn't understand how our body could hold on to all of these things, and how raw food was like, just such a miracle. It was a God's given gift to us to use as a tool, as a healing tool. And so to even wrap my head around living a raw lifestyle and a raw diet and including all of this was very eye-opening for me. And it was the very first time I was able to put it to work, put it to use, and experience it for myself. And so I just remember like going, and I remember the first time, first night we were there, and you gave us like these little salads, and you're like, okay, guys, we're going on a fast. Like, this is, we're going to start juice fasting. And I thought, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? Like, what is about to become before me? And I just remember though, a lot of anxiety I had when I was there. And I had a lot of anxiety. I didn't know if it was the right move that I was there. And I thought, oh my goodness, I just want to go home. And my roommate, Vera, which was another God-given gift, and she's like, you can't go home, because if you go home, I'm going to have to go home. You have to stop crying, because then I'm going to cry, and like all of this. And so after she kind of said that, then I was like, wow, maybe there was even another reason why I was here. And really, we were the only ones in our age group that were there at the same time. And we really bonded like instantly. It was like more of a spiritual bond than anything. And so then I believe it was by day 3, my energy started shifting. I started feeling better. My mood started lifting, and I was like feeling vitality again, so much that in the beginning of Bella Vita, when we started working out, I would have to lay on the machines, and I would have to take a break in between sets because I was just so exhausted. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then when we went on our walks, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this either, but I didn't want to look bad. So I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And so then, but by the end, I had enough energy to work out. I had enough energy to go on this 4-mile walk. And I had the energy to come back and feel good and want to like conversate with people and connect with people. And it was a whole new thing too, because it was the first time I was introduced with the connection between raw food and God and his healing properties and his healing tools with his herbs and God and faith and God, and how, and two, as I continue to study even on my own, and how you guys even taught me how, like, if you're angry, it's in the liver, or, your different organs hold different emotions. And I thought, wow, it comes back to God every single time, because when you surrender yourself to him and you know who you are through him, and forgiveness takes place because you can forgive yourself, then you're finding yourself forgiving others. And then you see your bitterness healing, your anger going away, your unforgiveness going away, your hatred going away. And all of these different things start healing and sewing up, that when you do that, your body just releases, it lets go, and it starts loving again. And I believe love is a huge healing tool in our bodies, because also in the brain and the mind and how that connects. And so that huge thing was another big eye opener for me. And it was a very overall amazing experience with all of the people that were there. Huge, just love. It was nothing but love, nothing but family. Meeting people was huge, and just the overall experience. There's nothing else to explain, to compare it to.
I remember at the end of the program, you shared with us the first picture you took looking into the mirror.
Yes.
On the first day you arrived.
Yeah.
And you probably still have the picture. Your cheeks were puffy and red. Your forehead was puffy and red.
Yeah.
Your eyes looked like they were just drained. And just looking at that picture, it didn't look like a healthy individual who was feeling good. You know?
Very inflamed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you shared with us a picture on day 5 where the swelling had gone down. The red in the cheeks and the forehead was gone. You could see energy revived in the eyes again, and just a contrast within 5 days. And I remember we were sitting down at our first meal when we were breaking the fast. And you were looking down at your food, and you looked back up, and I believe you turned over to me or Vera, and you said, I can't eat this. And you said, I'll be right back. So you ran to your room, and you came back with your card from your allergist, which had, I think it was maybe 15 or so foods you couldn't eat. And you said, there's like 3 of them on this plate, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know if I should eat them, but I've had so much success so far.
I'm just going to go for it.
I'm going to go for it and see what happens. You know?
Yeah, you had such a good attitude and just wanted to go all in, and that was we appreciate that.
So I remember you sharing with us that you ate the food and you didn't have any flare-ups.
None.
And I think that's so amazing. What were you doing? You were assisting your detox pathways. You were incorporating fresh living juices. You were doing all raw during that time. The lifestyle education, you were working out again. Your health was reviving. Just looking at the picture, you could see the glow in your face, And were you kind of blown away that in a matter of days, your health revived?
Oh, yes. Yes, I didn't know something like that could be possible, especially with how I was feeling every single day. I thought there was no way I could be feeling this good in this short amount of time.
Yeah.
And even like you were saying, all the things that we were doing, but grounding was big, and getting out in the sun was big, and the cold sheet therapy and just different things like that. It was just everything that you introduced. It was just life.
Yeah. Now, what about, so you were feeling better, you were having more energy, but what about the Raynaud's? What about the joint pain? What about the other issues you were having? Did you notice improvement with those issues?
Yes, I did. And even after the cold sheet therapy, I remember you guys taking off the wool blanket and everything, and I had no reactions in my hands at all. And that next day was the first day I had woken up in, I don't know, months or years. I don't even remember at this point, but with no pain, no inflammation. And I remember even going to bed when we went to sleep, I would have the ceiling fan on, and here would be so cold, but I was just so inflamed that it really hurt me to sleep without the fan on. And that next morning I woke up with no inflammation at all.
That is so neat, isn't it?
And for those who are listening who aren't so familiar with our program, why don't you explain what the cold sheet treatment is and that therapy she had? Yeah.
So the cold sheet, that's pretty cool, because what we do is we take a bathtub and we heat it up to about 104 degrees. And then we take 2 tablespoons of ginger powder, mustard powder, and cayenne powder. and we put that in the water. So we're making like a broth, an herbal broth. And then we place the client in the bathtub. So we're heating their body externally while we're taking their vitals. We're keeping their head cool with cool rags. And then they're drinking hyssop and yarrow tea. So hyssop is a very cleansing herb, and yarrow is a heating herb. So we're heating up the individual externally, but internally as well. And the body starts to purge. But when you're inducing a fever, because that's essentially what we're doing, we're allowing the a low-grade fever, we're allowing the immune system to go out and attack any type of pathogens that are in the system that need to be attacked, you know?
And so it's amazing that you could even tolerate an herbal heating bath. And I know we didn't make it too hot, you know, you didn't stay in there for too long, but you're still able to tolerate it because it was medicinal.
And then it's called a cold sheet treatment because we have a sheet that's been soaking in ice water. And then we take that out and wrap the client with it. So that's the cold sheet. And then we lay them on a bed and wrap them with wool and cotton blankets. And the individual just starts to sweat, and they're purging and they're purging. But what we also find too is individuals can even purge emotional toxins, I believe. You know, there's an author that stated that 9/10 of all disease has the origin in the mind. So if we're holding on to, if you think bitterness, if we're holding on to remorse, if we're holding on to guilt, shame, whatever it may be, we could be weakening our body, and our body's trying to thrive, our body's trying to function. But I believe that if we put our body in right conditions, our body is going to respond favorably. So that's where, like, with what I saw with you, Erica, was we incorporated some of these holistic aspects to assist in boosting the immune system, assist with detoxifying the body, assisting with the grounding, with the cold sheet treatment, maybe even assisting with any emotional baggage that potentially you had. And I believe through that type of an approach, we see the body is able to respond because we're putting the body in these right conditions.
And we're also praying verses. We were praying verses and claiming them over you, and just kind of we're talking through some things too. So that all helped with the emotional purging and emotional healing.
Yeah.
But I know you have more of a journey, of course, that happened after Bella Vita. So we do want to get to that.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you first came, just going back to what you had told me, God is telling me to come.
Yeah.
And like I shared the verse, for I know the plans that I have for you. So I believe we could say God brought you to Bella Vita.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this was a stepping stone for you.
Absolutely.
So when you left Bella Vita, now let's come to maybe more of the present and what your journey was like afterwards. You left Bella Vita. How was your health? What did you incorporate afterwards to now get to where you are today? Because I know you mentioned briefly you lost a whole bunch of weight in the last couple of years.
Yeah, in 2021.
So I don't know. I find it interesting sometimes how in order to get better, sometimes we have to get worse first.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So you left Bella Vita, you were feeling good, you were recharged, but then what?
So I came home, I was very excited. I thought, you know, I have the answer to everybody's problems. And I came home, I was so excited. And I told my husband and I said, can we do this again? And so he's like, yeah. So we ordered the whole detox to do at home. So we did it 2 more times that year and we loved it. Like we both felt just amazing from it. And he was so skeptical about like the coffee enemas and things like that. And so it was a big change, a big adjust, but we both started feeling a huge difference. And it was hard for me to think, wow, I'm going to never eat animal protein again. But because too, there was like, oh, coffee, you know, you shouldn't drink coffee and you shouldn't eat cheese and you shouldn't have meat. I'm like, wow, this is my life. Like, what am I supposed to do? And because family too is just tied so tightly around food and traditional things such as that, birthdays, holidays. And I didn't know, I knew I wanted to do this lifestyle, but I didn't know how it was going to affect my overall life. I didn't know how it was going to impact my family. I didn't know how it was going to impact our relationship. I didn't know if even Kyle was going to be on board. And so that year I had salmon 3 times. I got rid of all of like the processed foods. We started doing the carrot tacos that we had at Bella Vita. I did them at home, and he had meat a few more times that year. And I think it was, so October 19 for me is when I said, okay, no more animals at all, no products at all. I am going plant-based. And so then he had something, I think in November, or no, it was actually October. And so October 19, we both decided 100% plant-based. And during that time, we were starting to run together. Our energy was picking up. Our relationship had strengthened through it. And my family even saw the big change in us. My husband's a diabetic type 1, and his A1C came down, and his energy just went up. And so It was incredible. And then by 2020, I thought I want to do fully like high raw all the time. And so we did. Then I came across Dr. Brooke Goldner, which I mentioned before. So we went on, I believe it was 42-day, like a cleanse or detox. And it was rebuilding the body with tons of minerals, hypernourishing. And again, our energy just improved. We were then running 3 miles a day, every day. And we loved being in nature. We loved partaking of everything that we could. I was doing interviews. I was doing podcasts. I was starting to grow my business, and I loved every bit of it. And so then by 21, end of 2020, I started losing weight, and I thought it was temporary. And I thought, oh, I'll just regain it. This is just like detox or something. I don't know. Yeah. Well, by 2021, my appetite continued to shrink, and my stomach continued to rebel. And so I was having a lot of trouble digesting food. And so we came across Brooke Goldner. I got all of her information online, and we thought, wow, this is just another healing tool that we can put in our back pocket and actually just like run with it. So I thought too at that time, because I was high raw, but I was still incorporating like sweet potatoes at night, things like that. And so when I thought I had to give up sweet potatoes or any almonds or anything like that, I thought, oh my goodness, can I really do this? And so my mother said, Erica, if this can reverse your autoimmune, then you need to do it. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. And my husband too, he was full game for it. So we both jumped in together. And that's when our 3 miles started kicking in. We were loving nature, connecting. Our relationship grew even more. And we were absolutely loving it. And then I visited a naturopath. It was my second appointment with her. It wasn't a doctor that I was too crazy about, but I still did the follow-up appointment. She ran lab work. I got the labs back, and that's when everything came back normal. Like the ANA was negative. It was just, that is when I knew that I was doing the right thing, and that God had literally led every step of mine to you guys, to Brooke Goldner, to Dr. Kevin Stasny, to put all of these things together to actually put my body in that healing state to reverse everything that had been done.
You must have been so ecstatic, you know, because I was. Starting at age 13, up until 30 years old, or so, you were struggling, you know. Yeah. I mean, to finally have a bill of good health, you know, it must have been like a weight off of your shoulders.
Yes, it was. I was in the kitchen. I was like I really didn't know how to respond at first. And Kyle was like trying to be more excited, like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
You know, because I was just like, oh my goodness, this is what it is. I was just more shocked. And then I cried. And then it was just, yeah, the reality hit, sunk in, told the family, they were ecstatic. My grandmother, you should have seen my grandmother when we told her. She just, oh my gosh, it was amazing. It was wonderful.
Wow, Erica, we're so excited for you. I mean,
Thank
you've
you.
kind of come in and out of our thoughts and hearts and minds. And so I know we were praying for you even after you left Bella Vita. I am curious about the part where you were 79 pounds. Is that right?
That's right.
You lost a lot of weight, and that was in 2021. And how did you prevent refeeding syndrome from happening? Because as a dietitian, that's something we learn about when somebody is so incredibly thin like that, they can, their heart can stop once they start incorporating more calories, especially carbohydrates, back into their system. So that, as a dietitian, man, that scares me to think that you got to that such severe low weight.
Well, during that time, I didn't understand how fruit could reverse candida or anything like that, because I then found out that I was still dealing with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, candida, things like that. And the doctor at that time told me, no fruit. And so I thought, okay, I can't eat any fruit. And during that time, I kept praying, and I knew that if I was already not able to digest lettuce, then how was I even supposed to digest anything else anyway? So I literally just dug in and prayed. And that's the only reason why I knew that I was doing the right thing, is because I sought God over every single thing that I did. When I was 79 pounds, I still was dealing with the toxins, and I was still doing colonics faithfully weekly. My family was completely supportive, except there were a couple times they would think, is this something that you should still be doing, being this thin and this frail? And I just knew that it was something to get the toxins out of my body so that my body could start absorbing again. And I believed that I just needed my body to absorb, and there was something in my body preventing me from absorbing. So I didn't change anything that I did. I continued high cruciferous vegetables, high leafy greens, and tons and tons and tons of juice. We were juicing 8 cucumbers, sometimes 12 cucumbers a day. We were juicing tons of celery. I was drinking tons of green juice, carrot juice, beet juice. And then while we were staying in Florida, there was this amazing, cute little place, and it was called Happy Healthy Human. And I would go there every day, and I would get juices and talk with the people there. It was such a cute town. I absolutely love it, and I hope to go back one day. But I just had faith that I was getting the sugar that I needed, the fuel, the carbs that I needed through the beets and through the carrots, and occasional apples that I was juicing. And when you talk about your heart stopping, I had a lot of issues with my heart, and I had a lot of issues with my blood pressure. So much that I landed in ER multiple times. And there was one time that I was by the pool, by the ocean, and my husband was working inside, and we were staying in a condo, an Airbnb. And my migraine, I started getting this really bad migraine, and I didn't know what was going on. And he came out, he checked on me. He was like, I'm okay. I'm just going to, rest in the sun, and hopefully, it'll make everything better. Well, an older couple came out. I walked over to them. I said, I'm really not feeling well. And I knew they were believers. And I just felt God want me to ask them to pray for me. And I had only met these people like twice. And I said, would you pray over me? And they said, absolutely. Well, the woman walked me back to the condo because I was not feeling well. and it continued to progress. And I thought, okay, I need some beet juice. And I like went to eat something and I like spit it out because I was so sick. I couldn't even stomach eating anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I laid on the couch, and it took everything within me to say Kyle, and he was in the other room. And so I finally got his attention. He came in, he picked me up, took me to the emergency room. And at that time, I said, God, please just get me to the nearest emergency so I do not die. And wow. I thought that I was literally going to die. My blood pressure was through the roof. My top number was 199, and my bottom number, I think, was like 172 or something like that. And they were waiting for it to hit 200, and then they would admit me. But it never hit 200. But I was shaking. And before that was actually even another time, my electrolytes, I was so dehydrated. He took me in, and they gave me IVs, and they said, okay, we can't do anything else. You have to go to the emergency room. That was the urgent care. So they gave me 2 bags of saline and sent me to the urgent care. And then they had to give me even more bags of saline because I was just so dehydrated. I was spending hours in the sun only because like it was making me feel very good. And I thought for sure with all those juices and everything, there's no way that I could be dehydrated. But when I went in, I said, I need fluids. I need fluids. I know exactly. And they were asking me questions. And I said, I need fluids now. Like I was about to lay on the floor. I was sweating. It was bad. It was bad. I had a lot of instances like that, but I just had to believe still that God was telling me what to do. And I don't think God wants us to go through anything like that. No, I don't believe that, but I do believe that he keeps us safe in a time like that. And I knew that there was going to be a turning point because in 2019, I wanted to give up, and I didn't think that there was a turning point. But at that time, because of everything I had gone through, I thought there is no way I'm stopping now. And I know there's going to be a turning point because I know that God's glory is waiting to be revealed. And I was not about to let that go. And so little by little, my diet still didn't change, and I started gaining weight. And it was just incredible. And at one point, I really started craving fruit. And I said, you know what, I'm going to eat it. So I ate like a green apple. I ate a mama sapote while I was there, fell in love with it. And like, I didn't overdo it, but just little bits. And my stomach was tolerating it. It was digesting. I was feeling better, and just little by little. So I knew that God had led me every step of the way in what I was supposed to do, because I did not consult a doctor. Like I was working with somebody, but only to a point that was so far, and I wouldn't go to like the medical doctors. And so, yeah, it was just.
Wow. So it was a gradual turning point, like you said. And if you guys want to check out Erica's Instagram, she has reels where it shows her at this, severe underweight point in your life. And you're also just praising God and giving glory to him through this journey, but also showing some of the despair of it too, because that must have been so scary to go through.
I cried a lot. We tried going to many sunsets while we were there, and I couldn't stay awake. I would go to sleep. I would get extremely tired at 5:30. I would be zonked out on the couch, and I would be shaking. I would be tired, and I'd have to go to bed. And so it was very tiring. And so there was a lot of times that was very trying.
So you look like you're at a healthy weight now, but how long did it take to bounce back? I mean, from 79 pounds to a healthy weight right now. I mean, you incorporated fruit, but how long did it take? What else did you do? Because that's very thin.
It was very thin, but it was like by 2022, I was already back in the hundreds. I was already, by May, I was back to 107. And it just kept going up. And in 2022, because I had also lost my cycle through all of that, my body was just so small and so frail. It just could not, it didn't feel safe. And so that was another thing for me. So after doing the whole high raw, I thought, okay, I'm going to start implementing some cooked foods. And so I did that, and I gained my period back, gained a little bit more weight, but by December of 2022, I had gained more than I was before the whole incident. And so, yeah, it definitely came through.
What a remarkable story, Erica.
Wow.
It really makes me think of, this is a message of hope, but it's also telling me, one, we have to trust in God with our whole heart, but also recognize that through our health journey, it's a process. We didn't wake up one morning and be like, oh, I'm sick. We had to work hard at getting sick, And just like in your story, you had to work hard at getting better. It wasn't overnight you were better after you incorporated juices and raw food and other aspects. It took time, and you were diligent at it. And I think your message really brings hope to people, because I meet so many individuals to where they're impatient. They don't see the results quick enough, so they throw in the towel and they say, oh, this process doesn't work for me, But you went through a journey of 13, all of these health conditions, to medication, to incorporating more of a holistic approach, to completely trusting in God, which I believe you trust in God all throughout the journey, but incorporating a complete holistic approach to your health kind of failing again until it got better. Right. And here we are sitting with you. You have so much to share. You have so much empathy, I imagine, for individuals who are going through your exact journey right now, who may be saying, I wish I just could hold my boyfriend's hand without having pain, I wish I could just live life normally, like my relatives, like my friends, like my husband is able to enjoy life, So thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today. And with everything you've experienced, for everybody who's watching or listening to this, and they want more information, they want to learn more about your journey, where can they go to learn more about you, or what you're doing, or how you're able to help people through a autoimmune type of an approach?
So right now, the best way to reach me is through my Instagram, Overcome Autoimmune. You can also search Erica Taft. It should come up. And I'm working on the TikTok thing right now. I'm trying to become more savvy with social media. I have just finished writing a book. Nice. I need to get that edited and published and all of that. But that's something else that I'm very excited coming forth. But yeah, if you want to reach out through Instagram, that's how you can find me, Overcome Autoimmune.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. And we just want to leave all of you with hope, because that's what this message has been. Here you have seen this young woman who wanted to give up at one point, and now she's thriving, and now she's wanting to serve, and she's wanting to help individuals who potentially may be exactly where you were. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today. It's so great to chat with you.
And we look forward to following you in the future, too. I know God has bright things in store for you, Erica.
Thank you so much. You guys are so wonderful. Thank you for having me today. And it's so nice seeing and talking to you again. It's been wonderful.
If you have enjoyed this podcast, please share it with somebody who needs this information. You may know somebody right now who is dealing with an autoimmune condition, or maybe another health issue, and they are just in desperate need of a message of hope. I will leave in the show notes how you can learn more about Erica and follow along on her cleansing journey. And I will also provide information on how you can learn about the same exact cleansing program that Erica used at our Bella Vita Lifestyle Center. Until next time, may you prosper and be in health.